Welcome to the Disney Parks Podcast with your hosts, Tony Casanova from DisneyByTheNumbers.com and Krista Joy from DisneyWays.com. Keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the podcast at all times. And get ready for the Disney Parks Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Disney Parks Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest for you who has had a love of Disney since a very young age. And for years, he has written on various topics of Disney for a variety of publications, including several Disney fan sites and Celebrations magazine. Jeff has an amazing podcast as well called Communicore Weekly. So if you haven't heard that one, you need to check it out. Jeff Heimbuch, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for having me back, actually.
Yay,
yeah,
you're
welcome.
A repeat guest. Yeah,
well, we had to have you back because you produced another awesome book that I love.
Thank you. I'm glad you like it. That's one person down. A million more to go.
Yeah.
That's big. If Tony didn't like it, he would tell you he didn't like it.
Good.
So. Well, maybe not on the podcast. No, it really, one thing that always did interest me in like the Disney history and stuff, it was the windows. When somebody, first pointed out that, there was windows for, Disney legends and people that helped build the parks, I was like, wow, that's, really interesting and cool. And I used to, kind of do the same thing, is take pictures of the windows and then try and figure out, who the window was for. So,
yeah,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, the same exact thing for me. I've always saw them and loved seeing them, and they're so whimsical and stuff. But like everyone, I'm like, who are these people that the names I didn't recognize? Like, what is the meaning behind it? Is there a meaning behind it? So it just bugged me for years as a Disney fan.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And this is a lot larger than any other predecessor that's been out there. It covers all of the parks, which is also another thing that I said, well, that's very cool, because I knew, of the parks here in the U.S., but I did not know that they were doing this in Paris and Hong Kong and Tokyo and other places too.
Yeah, it's company-wide, essentially. So I'm going to have to make a trip, obviously, to Shanghai when they open to see what windows I have there eventually.
Obviously.
Yeah. Okay, so let's start with, how did the tradition of the naming of the windows begin? Do we know how this all came about, Jeff?
So it actually started before Disneyland itself opened, when they were building Main Street. I'm sure most people know already that when Disneyland opened, most of the shops were not owned by Disney. They were owned by outside lessees, and they came in and they sold whatever they wanted, their wares. Like, that's how the Wizard of Oz came about, like an intimate apparel shop on Main Street. That's a little weird for a Disney nowadays, but back in 1955, that's what they were doing. So at the time, some of the shops weren't going to be ready for opening day, so they decided to add fake windows to some of them to make the town look lived in. And some of the Imagineers at the time, they just put their own names, a little whimsical things for it. But Walt himself actually picked a handful of people who worked specifically on the park, whether they were in the Disney company or they were outside contractors, and said, we should give them windows too, just so they have a thank you, like the opening credits. So it kind of started from there, essentially from Walt a little bit, and they are the opening credits to the park, especially now. Like, when you walk in and you see all these names, all these people have done something for that particular park in one way, shape, or form that was very significant. And the Walt Disney Company wanted to honor them by putting the names there. But yeah, it did start back in 1955, essentially with Walt himself.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you mentioned the bra store. At Destination D, I forgot who was doing the presentation, but they said that some of the stores on Main Street, like the bra shop, were there so that Walt could keep Lillian in the parks longer. Because there was something there for her to buy or shop for, then she would stay in the parks longer.
I don't think it's just for Lillian. Obviously, right. He was catering to her, but for a female audience, I know I don't mean to get sexist here, but they were selling things geared towards certain sects of people. Like, they had a cigar shop for men who like to smoke. They had the intimate apparel shop for women. They had, the antique shop, especially in New Orleans Square later on, because Lillian liked that kind of stuff. So he kind of wanted all this stuff there, so people would come in the park, have a good time, and also, walk out with something unique.
So on opening day, they were not really named after people. They were just, regular store windows with whimsical things on them.
There was a handful that actually were named after people. Most of them at the time were outside contractors who were doing stuff for Disney, but the rest of them were just placeholders until the stores were ready and moved in. It wasn't until later on, I don't know the exact year, but it wasn't until later on when the Imagineer tribute windows really started to become a thing that they did.
Yeah. Now, where did it all begin? Who started the tradition of naming the windows?
To be honest with you, in all my research, I couldn't find 100% who actually started that tradition itself.
Wow.
I'm going to have to go. This is, again, a generalized guess. I'm not entirely sure. But because Walt was the one putting, the outside contractors that helped on the windows, I can only assume that he was the one that also suggested doing it for, the people that helped in the park as well. Because windows were appearing even in 1955. And 1956, so they were getting there pretty early. I mean, many of them have been there since almost essentially opening day, but I really don't know who exactly started the tradition.
Wow.
Do we know what was the first window that was dedicated?
Honestly, I don't know. There was no. I'm trying to think. How like today, Tony Baxter was the last person to get a window at Disneyland, and they had this big dedication ceremony for him. I really don't think they did that back in the 50s and the 60s. I think they just kind of put them up there, kind of with no ceremony whatsoever. Because to them, it didn't mean the same thing back then that it does today. Today, it's like literally the highest honor you can get as an employee of the Walt Disney Company. Back then, it was just kind of a cool little thing they did to make the town feel a little more alive. So they didn't have any formal ceremony for these things back then.
It was the first hidden Mickey.
Essentially, yes, it is.
Yeah, kind of a little hidden tribute. So how do you know, are you familiar with the process? How do people get a window done today?
The main requirement is that they contributed significantly to the Walt Disney Company and to that particular park in some way, shape, or form. Other than that, the people who are actually getting who the window is honoring, especially these days, they don't know until they're told that they've been picked. And then they don't even know what the window looks like until the window is unveiled in frent of everybody else.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. That's really neat.
Yeah. Do we know, who's making the window? Is there a window making shop in Disney? I'm assuming they're all made in Disneyland, or maybe not. Maybe they are made somewhere else.
Yes and no. There's some conflicting stories, and I've heard some stories from people who have worked on windows but don't officially work for the company. But there is a sign shop at Disney, and that's where they do a lot of their signage, and most of them originate from there nowadays. But there have been a handful, especially in the early 2000s, that were kind of outsourced to someone else. I'm not going to say the name, but I did speak to them a handful of times about it. So yeah, it kind of goes back and forth. It depends on the window.
Yeah. Okay.
Wow.
Cool.
All right. So what do you think is harder? Is it harder to become a Disney legend or to get a window? Or do you have to be a legend to get a window?
You do not have to be a legend to get a window, but I definitely think it's harder to get a window, especially nowadays, because every 2 years now, Disney inducts a handful of people into, to become a Disney legend, especially with the D23 Expo. I mean, they usually do like a ton of people there to make them become Disney legends. But windows, they only come around every so often. I mean, Tony Baxter got one a year and a half ago at this point. And, before that, I think it was like a year before that someone got a window. So I mean, it's much more exclusive to get a window than it is to become a Disney legend. Not to downplay the importance of being a Disney legend, of course, because that's a pretty huge honor also. But it's definitely harder to be picked to get a window.
Yeah, the only recent windows I remember are like Tony Baxter, Alice Davis, and the Sherman Brothers.
I'm actually going to cheat right now, and I'm opening my book.
Okay.
Harrison Buzz Price. I think he was the one that got his just the year before Tony Baxter.
Okay.
And he is directly on the left-hand side as soon as you walk onto Main Street at Disneyland, and he's one of the very few windows that's actually on the first story as opposed to the second story. But his is a fairly recent window as well.
Okay. All right. This is. The only tip I'll give you, Jeff, for this book is that if you had a map of Main Street with where the windows were located, that would be the only thing I would add to this book.
So that is actually one of two things that were in the process for this edition, and it just didn't get completed in time. Maps of at least Disneyland and Walt Disney World, and then an index is another one. Because even me, I particularly, like if I want to know somebody's window, I just want to look up their name and be able to go to their page. But that is definitely something that will be in a future edition of the book, both those things.
Yeah, that'll be, those will be great additions. I'd really dig them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they've already added windows since this book came out, so it's definitely needed at some point.
Yeah. Now, do you have a favorite window that, because of the person or the saying or the design?
I have two favorite windows. One, because I'm biased, and that's obviously Rolly's. I just love his window. I love how it pays tribute to some of his designs. I love the sign that he has out front of his window for the Palm Parlor. I think it's really cool. And I also really love Dick Nunis's window, especially because it makes a reference to, it says something along the lines of wave machines, a specialty. And the story of him and the wave machine at Walt Disney World Resort is just one of my favorite stories of all time. So I really like that window as well.
Okay, tell everybody the wave machine story in case they don't know.
The rumor supposedly is that when they were building Walt Disney World, Dick Nunis was an avid surfer, and he really pushed to get a wave machine installed in the Seven Seas Lagoon for everyone, but mostly because he wanted to go surfing in the Seven Seas Lagoon. So it was for his own personal satisfaction. Unfortunately, it's no longer used. It hasn't been used in years because it was actually eroding the shore away a little bit at a time, and they just had to turn it off completely because it would have destroyed the entire shoreline.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that water is yucky, right? Who would want
now that water is yucky? It wasn't yucky back then, but maybe it was a little yucky back then, but much more now.
Well, there's a lot more boat traffic on it than it was back in 1971.
Yes. Yeah, that diesel fuel is not helping it whatsoever.
Exactly. There's another cute Dick Nunis story I heard at one of the I think it was the Epcot 30th presentation. Dick was going around I think it was the Magic Kingdom during construction, and every day he told the construction foreman to make sure that they cleaned up the garbage pile. And he's there with the foreman, and he goes, "Hey, I told you to clean up this garbage pile." And the foreman says, yeah, this is today's garbage. So Dick's like, yeah, okay. So he goes back the next day, and he says to the foreman, "Hey, I told you to clean up this garbage pile." No, he goes, "This is today's garbage pile." So Dick goes, "All right, come with me." And he goes around to the back of the pile, and he pulls out his business card, and he goes, "No, it's not, because I put this card here yesterday." So that's one of my favorite Dick Nunis stories.
That man is hilarious. I want to hear more of his stories all the time.
I do too. I think he was a great character in his own right.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I know there's a couple of different Walt windows in Disneyland and here in Disney World. Is there a Walt window in every park?
Well, technically speaking, at Disneyland, there isn't an official window that's dedicated to Walt Disney. There is the casting agency window with his name on it that's actually dedicated to the cast members of the Disneyland Resort. But there is one at Walt Disney World in the Magic Kingdom over the train station, and then there's one facing out towards the castle, which off the top of my head, I think it's like the School of Design. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
I think that's what it says. School of Design. It's over the ice cream shop.
Yes. Yeah. And then there is also one at Tokyo Disneyland.
Oh, all right. I did not know that.
Actually, I'm cheating again, and I'm looking it up. Tokyo Disneyland only has a handful of windows, but they're all really, really nicely done.
Yeah, I would think he had some pretty cool windows.
Yeah, I would. Yeah. Because they're brand new, and the process of making them is probably a little different, and all that good stuff. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, Tokyo Disneyland is Walter E. Disney and Associates Design and Master Planning. That's what his is at Tokyo.
Perfect.
Now, did they ever repeat a window from park to park, or are they all different in all the parks?
There's a handful that are very similar, but they have slight differences when it comes to some of the Imagineers. But there's also a handful that are also not dedicated to anyone specifically. They're just kind of general atmosphere windows that are the same in park to park. There may be a word or two that switched around, but for the most part, there's something different about each and every single one of the tribute windows in all the parks worldwide.
Very cool. Have they ever removed any of them?
Yes, as a matter of fact, they had land, and it was because the person left the company and he created his own theme park industry company, and he was trying to steal people away from Imagineering. So they took his name off the window and they put somebody else's name on it instead.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Did they ever do windows for Roy? I think he's got one on Main Street here in Walt Disney World.
Yes, Roy does have windows, yes.
Yeah, okay.
And actually, to go back to, now that I'm thinking about it, there is a window for Walt, but it's not on Main Street at Disneyland. It's actually in Toontown, and it's for Lathogram Films, and it only says W.E. Disney on it. So some people may not realize it's for Walt, but there is one in Toontown.
That's where he belongs, in Toontown.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Krista?
Okay, so sorry. Helps if you unmute yourself. So how did you get the pictures? I haven't had a chance to see your book, unfortunately. I know Tony's read it from cover to cover, and a bunch of my writers have read it from cover to cover. But I haven't been able to see it myself. How were you able to get the photos in there? Because I understand there's quite a few of them.
Yes. So we have photos for every window at Disneyland and Walt Disney World, and for most of the overseas parks. Thankfully, at the time I was writing this book, I had a lot of friends who just happened to be going to some of these overseas parks. So I was like, while you're there, can you do me a favor and, maybe snap a couple of photos for me? Because at the time, I generally just wanted photos of the windows for the research. I didn't necessarily want them for the book. And then I realized, these actually are good photos, and these are parks that some people here may never get to visit. So it would be cool to include some of these photos. So thankfully, the people who took those photos for me were gracious enough to let me use them. As for the parks here, I actually had two local friends who are very talented photographers, and they took the photos for me here. Because I could take an okay picture, but I really wanted someone to take really nice pictures for me. So thankfully, a lot of photographer friends were in the right place at the right time for me.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad that you were able to get some help like that, because that's really special. You have so many awesome pictures like that, and everybody that took every one of them. It's really cool.
Yeah, it was really, really nice of them. Now, again, slightly jealous that I didn't get to go to Disneyland Paris and Hong Kong Disneyland and stuff. However, I am appreciative that they took the pictures for me when they were there.
Yeah, they are good pictures, and some windows are very hard to photograph, so these came out pretty good.
I'm actually pleasantly surprised by most of them. There are a handful that are very, very hard to photograph. There's actually one here at Disneyland, right above the Disneyland gallery now, that always has a banner in front of it now for whatever art show they're displaying in there, and you can never, ever get a clear shot of it. So that one I was kind of, figuring we were never going to get a good shot. Thankfully, I went back to my picture archives from years ago when I visited Disneyland, and I found a clear shot of it, and it totally works. So the picture that's in the book now, it's actually a Frank Wells's window. The picture in the book is from 10 years ago, I think.
Wow. I have to say this. I have, being a window fan, I don't even know how long ago. I'm going to say it's probably about 6 years ago. They made 2 windows. They stand probably about 6 to 8 inches tall. One of Walt's window here in Walt Disney World, and one of Roy's window. And they were supposed to, do a whole series of these little art pieces, and it never happened. So I have the first and only 2 in a series of, I don't know how many would have ever come out, but that's it. So
it would have been cool if they actually made those. I mean, that's something I would have bought as well.
Yeah, I bought them. I got 2 of them. I should send you a picture of them. Then you maybe include them in your book next time.
Yeah, I actually would like to see them too, to be honest with you. I don't think I've actually seen actual pictures of them before.
Yeah, I'll have to get your email address, and I'll send you a copy of them.
Yeah, we'll put them in the show notes too.
Yeah, they're very cool. I wish they made more of them, but with Disney, they probably didn't sell, and they said, "All right, scrap that idea. No more windows." Yeah. But I keep them by my Main Street Electrical Parade. It's my little Main Street on my bookshelf.
That's a perfect place for them.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So what's new for Jeff? What do you? Where else can people find you? Where else? Where can they buy the book? Any other Jeff projects we want to know about? That you can tell us about?
You can get the book from Amazon or any other fine booksellers online, and we're also selling signed copies of the book on orchardhillpress.com directly from the publisher. So if you want me to sign it, go there. I'd be more than happy to. But I mean, I'm still doing Communicore Weekly every week. We just started our 4th season of doing it, so that's 4 years of craziness. And this year we're actually doing a season-long theme called the Year of a Million or So Limited Time Cadets. So every week, we're going to pick a listener of the show, and they're going to get a prize. It's kind of like a certain other Disney promotion that lasted for a year and a half not too long ago. So we're like super excited about that. We're really trying to get the show more and more involved because we really like all of them. But aside from that, more Disney books coming up eventually. I don't want to give too much away right now, but there are a couple that are in the works right now. George and I, my co-host on Communicore Weekly, we're working on one right now. Similar to hidden tributes of things in parks. If you listen to the show, you'll know what I'm referring to. But that hopefully will be out before the end of 2015.
Yeah, Disney's new promo, the flip side of Disney side or whatever they're doing.
Oh, show your Disney side.
Yeah, but I think they are now extending it, and they call it the flip side of Disney side. There's some kind of promotion they do. Anyway, I just bring back the Year of a Million Dreams, and we'll all be happy.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the only promo we could really get our head around.
That's pretty much where we got our idea from.
Yeah. Exactly. It's the only thing that we understand. Prizes.
I'm never one to turn down a prize. I'll tell you that right now.
No.
If I walk through a turnstile and they tell me I won something, great. I don't care what it is. You can give it to me.
Well, and Jeff, you didn't mention, like, I'm a proud owner of something I bought on iTunes, a Communicore Weekly album.
Yes, it actually, like 2 days ago, was like the 1 year anniversary of us releasing that, the Communicore Weekly, the musical, which is still one of the most hilarious things I've ever done. I think I'm like super proud of that. So if you haven't heard that, and even if you don't want to buy it, I mean, you can go on Spotify or Google Play and listen to it for free. At least listen to the songs. I think they're catchy, at least.
It is hilarious.
Actually, I think some of the more cute story audio CDs with Rolly are actually on Spotify and stuff too. But I mean, those are also available on Amazon and iTunes as well.
Yeah, that's good to know because you got some great stuff out there. I forgot what I was going to ask him. Go ahead, Tony.
So mention the 2 other books, Jeff, the Raleigh Crump books, because maybe nobody heard the other podcast.
Yeah, if you didn't hear that one before, it's kind of a cute story by Rolly Crump, as told to me. It's been out for about 2 years now. It's all about Rolly's life as an Imagineer and about his work when he wasn't working for Disney. Basically, the life of an artist, and it's, a lot of his original drawings and photographs are in it. And then we kind of continued the series with the more cute stories audio CDs, and we have 5 of them now, and we're still working on 6 and 7. But I mean, you can get like actual CDs of them, or you can get digital copies on Amazon and iTunes and such.
Oh, very cool. I'm going to go get those. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, really quick, was there a particular window that was really difficult to find out about or research?
I'm going to say almost all of the overseas parks windows.
Wow.
When you're looking at the windows at Disneyland and Walt Disney World, I would say for the most part, especially now because of the Disney fandom, we know most of the names, and we can find out what these people did. But for some of the people, especially like at Disneyland Paris, they worked on Disneyland Paris and that was it. So it was a lot of figuring out what the names were and connecting with people like Snap, or even through like LinkedIn. I would find some of these people that were on the windows, and I would, say to them as politely as possible, "Hey, who are you? What did you do?" Because I would like to know for this book I'm writing. And thankfully, all these people were very gracious with their time and their information. And even if, a lot of them were, "Do you have any other names that you can't figure out?" I knew a lot of the people. I'd be happy to help or put you in touch with them. And so through that, I was able to talk to a lot of these people who are featured on the windows and get an inside scoop as to what they did for the company, which helped immensely. Otherwise, a lot of the entries would have been blank, and that would have been bad for the book.
I love that they helped you find the other people, their peers. That is really neat. I was just sitting here thinking, how cool would it be to have like a party and have all of them like a reunion?
Right?
Like,
yeah. It's really cool because they were even like, I haven't seen this person in a couple of years, but here's the old email I had or the old phone number. Feel free to give them a call. Tell them I said hello. So maybe they reconnected with these people afterward. I don't know, but it was really nice of them to put me in touch with them. And again, help me out with politely asking, "Who are you?"
It's tricky, especially if it's a more common name. It's very tricky.
Yeah, there was like a very common name. I'm just going to use John Smith as an example. It was like a name like John Smith for one of the overseas parks. And I'm like, I am never going to find this person. This is never going to happen. But thankfully, someone put me in touch with them. So it worked out really well.
It's fantastic. That's so great.
Yeah, and I think each person is also given a version of their window kind of as a keepsake take home.
Yes, they especially I think that's more of a recent thing within the last 10 years or so, but when you're honored with a window, you get like a miniature version of that window to put in your home somewhere. And they're all gorgeous. I've seen Rolly's up close, I've seen Bob's up close. I saw Tony's up close when it was in the gallery right after he got it. And they're a little bit smaller, so they can fit in a home somewhere, but they are so cool.
Yeah,
I can only imagine. Yeah. Did they let you take pictures of their little ones?
Actually, yeah, I do have pictures of Rolly's and Bob's. I don't know if I took one of Tony's, but I definitely have Rolly's and Bob's because they're hanging proudly on their walls in their homes.
Oh,
that could add to the next book, the next version too. Get a picture of everybody's little window.
Yeah, they're individual ones in the houses.
Send me a picture of your window, please.
Because again, we talked earlier before that we started recording that when Shanghai opens, I know they're going to have windows. And then I'm not joking. The day that this book came out, they added not Imagineer windows, but they added 2 new windows to Disneyland over the first aid station. And I was kicking myself. I'm like, if we just waited another week, I could have put these windows in the book. We would have been fine. So a second edition will be coming eventually.
yeah, version 2.0.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And something we did speak about before we started recording was there are 2 windows that have a 3D dimension to them.
Yes.
You want to mention what those 2?
So Rolly's is the first one. He has a Palm Parlor sign hanging in front of it, and Bob Gers for his Meteor Cycle Company has a bicycle right next to his window as well. So they're the only 2 windows that have some kind of additional 3-dimensional thing that goes along with it.
I love it. And Bob, we just recorded with Bob right before you, and he made a point to tell us that his was before Rolly's.
Yes, Bob's was there first, and then they gave Rolly one as well. I don't know how they determine who's getting a 3-dimensional thing or not, but I think they picked the 2 best people to get it.
Yeah, because Bob will talk about it all day long.
Yes, exactly. He loves that thing.
Yeah, he does.
Yeah.
He's digging it.
I would too. All right. Well, we've got to thank you so much for coming on the show. This was so fun. And we're definitely going to put links to everything in the show notes. You are doing so much. I mean, you have a very full life. You have a child and, a full-time job and school.
Full-time job, everything. I mean,
you are incredible. I don't know how you do it all, but we're so glad you do. This is so special. I mean, like you said, I don't think there was a whole lot of, Main Street window information out there. So what you've done is just amazing.
Yeah, I'm very happy I was able to get all this information at once. I mean, Tony mentioned earlier the other book that came out, and I emailed the author to make sure it was okay with him, and he was like, "Go right ahead. I want someone to do this." So I'm glad I was able to get all these stories out of who these people were, so people aren't walking down Main Street going, "Well, who is that? What did they do again? I'm not sure what that name is." Hopefully they'll know now.
Yeah, I can't wait to get my book so I can walk down Main Street and look at them all and know who they are.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Well, thanks for being on the show. And we just want to thank the listeners, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Thank you for listening to the Disney Parks podcast. We know there's a lot of great shows you could be listening to, so we appreciate you tuning in. And Jeff, it was a pleasure as always, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me on again. It's always great talking to you two.
We'll see you in the parks.
The Disney Parks podcast is not affiliated with the Walt Disney Company. All Disney parks, attractions, lands, shows, event names, etc. are registered trademarks of the Walt Disney Company.
Like a boat out of the blue, fate steps in and sees you through. One you wish upon a star, your dream